Hi, my name is Kris, and I want to take you on a journey through my life story. I'm 32 years old, and I'm from northeastern Pennsylvania. I grew up as a sports fanatic, someone who loved to play football and baseball, and really someone that really idolized sports. I loved them. I grew up in a non-Christian home, and I think that eventually played itself out in my life in a sense that I didn't really have a solid foundation to grow up on.
Hi, my name is Toni. I am 33 years old, and I was brought up in the Pocono area. And what I want to do is just give you a brief story about how God has really changed my life in many ways. But first, I want to start at a time when I was a senior in high school. I remember sitting in this waiting room, and sitting right across from me was my boyfriend at the time, and sitting right next to me was my best friend. And these are the two closest people in my life, yet in this moment I was sort of feeling like I was completely by myself. I could have never imagined I would even be in this place, and knowing what I know now, I think what brought me to this place started with things that had begun way before this time had come into my life. And I was brought up going to church here and there, but I wouldn't say I was brought up in a Christian home, even though I knew things about God. And so I had my first real relationship when I was in high school. I was dating this guy. He was the quarterback in the high school, and just very popular and cute, and I fell in love with him really quickly, or what I thought I was in love.
Sports sort of was my religion, and it sort of was my God. And as I grew up in high school, I continued to, I really excelled at football and baseball, and I really enjoyed playing sports, and I never thought that anything would happen as to any injuries or anything like that. I made very poor choices when I was in high school. I didn't take academics as seriously as I should have. I acted like an immature kid.
He just didn't treat me the way that I wanted to be treated, but at the same time, I was I guess I was more infatuated with him more than anything. And so this kind of led my high school years hoping this relationship would stay together. And he was a year older than me, so my senior year was when he went off to college.
I ended up starting for East Stroudsburg University, and in my first start, I suffered a career-ending injury. I had a third-degree separation of my AC joint, which basically is my collarbone was separated from my shoulder. After this traumatic event happened, I sort of just turned to another God to worship, per se. I turned to drugs. After I was injured, I was placed on opiates and Vicodins and Percocets, and I really liked those. In fact, I liked them so much that I ended up being addicted to them and sort of worshiping drugs in the same way that I would sports. Throughout my life, I was one who made poor choices pretty consistently. In fact, it even led to legal problems for me.
That's when things really started to go downhill, because as any girl, I thought, I'm going to lose him if, I don't do more with him, or, all those lies that were kind of in my head. And because he had been the only guy I felt like I'd ever fallen in love with, I thought that, going that next step would be okay. A month or so later, I found myself sitting in this waiting room about 4 months before I'm going to graduate high school, by the way. And I'm sitting in this waiting room making a decision I knew was going to affect my entire life. And sadly, that was to have an abortion, which I regret still to this day.
I didn't treat her the way that she deserved to be treated, and I ended up going off to college. And my first year in college, we ended up in a crisis pregnancy situation, which we regrettably decided to terminate. Upon completion of this horrific event, I did the real childlike thing and sort of ran away from this girl and decided to ignore her and sort of stuff the whole thing down and and really just pretend it didn't happen. I ended up at Teen Challenge Training Center in Western Pennsylvania. This was sort of a radical change for my life. I really went into this place thinking that it was some kind of crazy religious institution that I didn't want anything at all to do with. So pretty much every day for 4 months I would hear the same message from Romans 1:18 to 4:5, and I would find my true issues weren't just drug addiction or any of these other addictions that I had, but it was a sin problem. On January 1st, 2007, the one who said he would never, ever be a Christian and really just thought it was silly, to tell you the truth. I found myself in this chapel at this Teen Challenge Center in Western Pennsylvania at about 1 o'clock in the morning, and I was reading my Bible. I was reading Romans 1:18 to 32, and I came across things that said that I was ruthless, and I was a slanderer and a hater of God, and I was disobedient to my parents, and many other things that were on that same level. And I really, for the first time, came to see that all the things that I had done in my life to people weren't just offenses towards them, but they were actually offenses toward a holy God. That was the moment I believe that I was regenerated, and that was the time when the Lord really granted me repentance, and I came to trust in the finished work of Christ.
I was in college. I went to Westchester University as a vocal major, and while I was there, a couple of girls invited me to Campus Crusade for Christ, and I walked into this room, saw all of these kids just freely worshiping God, and what hit me was like, their parents didn't send them here. It's Thursday, which was like Thirsty Thursday on college campus, and they're here deciding they want to be with God. And that just really hit me. For the first time, the gospel became real to me. I remember going back into my dorm room and just praying, and I don't even remember what I prayed, just this childlike prayer, and I just wanted to be changed. It started a journey that I could never had imagined. And through this process, long story short, I started working for a crisis pregnancy center. And what I began to do was go into schools every single day and speak to middle school kids and high school kids about saving sex for marriage. And at the time, I had a purity ring on my finger, and I would tell the kids, just because you've messed up in the past doesn't mean that you can't start over. And I was just giving them a picture that they were worth more, because God was showing me that I was worth more. And I knew someday down the road, if I were going to be married, I wanted whoever I would marry to know absolutely they could trust me. And we all know you don't trust people by what they say. You trust them by their actions. And whoever I was going to marry, I wanted them to look at my entire life. They would see the mistakes in my past, but they would also see that for so many years I decided to wait for this person.
The Lord really revealed a lot of the sinful things that I had done in the past to me. This was probably the main thing that stuck on my mind for some reason. This was one thing that I really knew that I had to work at, trying to fix this thing somehow. I was looking on high school reunion sites, and I was trying to find her, and I didn't have any idea how to do such a thing until I found out about this thing called Facebook. I had never even heard of Facebook before this point, but I figured this was another online way that I could try to find her. And sure enough, there she was, right in front of me on the screen. And at that moment, I truthfully didn't really know what to do. There was fear going through me. There was also kind of excitement, because I knew that this might be the opportunity I have to apologize to this girl for the way I treated her.
One day, I am checking on my Facebook account, and I see a name that I haven't heard from in like 10 years, and it's Kris. And of course, my heart just like drops, because I'm like, what is going on? Why is he contacting me? And it's crazy because, as I mentioned before, I would speak in schools every day telling these students my story from my past. And so I was talking about him for like 5-6 years. But there was no, he wasn't real to me anymore because I had forgiven him in the past and I was moving on with my life. So never in a million years was I thinking he would ever come back. And so he wrote me and saying he wanted to talk to me. And the other thing that shocked me, which probably shocked him too, was that he was a Christian and I was a Christian. So that was just like mind-boggling too. So I did graciously decide that I was going to meet with him and let him say his piece, but I had my walls up and I was not going to trust him like I did in the past. And so I was guarded, but because of the way he presented himself, I think he broke those walls down very easily, because it wasn't that I was trusting in him, but I was trusting what God had done in him, and ultimately I was trusting who God is.
So I called her eventually and asked her if I would be able to apologize to her, and she wanted me to come down there and do it face to face if I was going to apologize, which made my nerves even worse. But it was very much the right thing to do. So we met outside of Philadelphia in Westchester, Pennsylvania, at a restaurant, and at that time I decided that I was going to be a man for the first time, and asked for forgiveness for one of the stupid things that I had done in the past. And we went to dinner. I asked her this very thing. She did graciously forgive me after. It wasn't an easy thing. You could tell that she was very guarded, would probably be the best way to describe it. But she did show me mercy that day. From that point on, we realized that we had both become Christians. We both were able to share one another's story with you. And really through this thing, it was a pretty awesome event to see how the Lord had kind of changed both of our hearts when we were in the place that we were in the past. At this point, we're 10 years removed from this event back in my freshman year of college. So this had been a decade since this occurred. We started to see that we had a lot of things in common, and we actually began to date in, I believe it was September of 2008. Things were really going well, and to see God and His providence and how He's watching over us and how He's governing His creation. I proposed to her on New Year's Eve 2009. She said yes. This was an awesome thing that occurred, and we were married on June 27th, 2009.
Three beautiful children now, and we're just amazed that God's still working. It's just it didn't end after we got married. He still has so much more in store for us.
To see our relationship and how we've been reconciled after such a long time, being on such rocky grounds, that's an amazing thing to see how God brings us back into a relationship with Himself through the work of Jesus Christ.
I'm just amazed that God would write this story for me and for him. And I always encourage other people, girls especially, that let God do it. Like, let God write the story for you, because He will blow you away with what He does.